Amazon bans book on transgenderism. For 3 years, Amazon sold Ryan Anderson's book, quote, When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment. Then, last February, the book disappeared from Amazon's virtual shelves. Anderson, president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, a conservative research institute, first learned his book was being censored when he received a message from someone who wanted to buy the book but could not find it on Amazon. The company said they removed the book because, quote, we have chosen not to sell books that frame LGBTQ+ identity as a mental illness. Anderson explained why he felt the book didn't do that, saying, quote, When Harry Became Sally details the topic of gender dysphoria, though it doesn't discuss it in the context of a mental illness, end quote. He said such language is stigmatizing. Anderson describes gender dysphoria as a, quote, deep discomfort that someone would feel as a result of biological sex that doesn't align up with their gender identity. Watch this.
And I actually now think we're at a point in time in which that it doesn't matter, how rigorous your argument is, how charitable your rhetoric is. If you just have certain convictions that run afoul of the left on certain, hot button third rail issues, they'll do whatever they can get away with to silence you.
In 2018, Ryan Anderson's book, When Harry Became Sally, was published. The book, which examined gender dysphoria and transgenderism, was a bestseller on the Washington Post list of DC bestsellers. But in 2021, the book disappeared from Amazon.
It was February of this year, and I was at my niece's birthday party. While we were there, sitting down, pull up my smartphone, look at the phone. Someone had reached out saying, hey, I went to buy your book and I can't find it. And so I just figured, you must be using the wrong title. So I pull up my Amazon app, and the hardback is gone, the paperback edition's gone, the Kindle's gone, the audiobook's gone, even the used copies. I text my book agent and I say, did someone forget to renew the listing with Amazon? And then we email the publisher. So they then reach out to Amazon. Amazon says, well, it violates our content policy. And of course, that makes us scratch our heads because they were selling the book for 3 years at this point.
Big tech censorship is not new.
Twitter and Facebook censor Republican members of Congress at a rate of 53-1 compared to Democrats.
Just in the past minute, Twitter has announced it is cutting off President Trump's ability to post on the social media site.
Facebook under fire for trying to silence law enforcement.
I'll just cut to the chase. Big tech's out to get conservatives.
Amazon, which controls 72% of adult new book sales online, according to the Wall Street Journal, was not known for being a big tech company that's censored. In fact, Amazon still has Mein Kampf for sale on its website.
There were 4 senators who sent a letter to Amazon asking, a series of questions about why they did this.
The Republican Study Committee also sent a letter to Amazon asking why the book was being censored. Amazon Vice President for Public Policy Brian Huseman responded to the senators in a letter, writing, "We have chosen not to sell books that frame LGBTQ+ identity as a mental illness."
The book doesn't do that. It discusses gender dysphoria, though it doesn't discuss it in the context of a mental illness. But I had avoided using the language that they accused me of, because that's stigmatizing, it belittles people, it marginalizes people. What finally convinced me, utterly, a book like this was needed, was I had encountered people who had transitioned and then detransitioned. And the first person I ever met like this was a 70-something-year-old man who had transitioned in his 50s, lived, I think, 8 years, identifying as a woman, and then detransitioned. And, his story is tragic. And then I started reading testimony and watching YouTube videos of people who transitioned in their teens and then in their 20s regretted it. And those stories were just utterly heartbreaking. You're watching them and you're tearing up. And then I just said, if I don't write this book, who will? I ended up reading thousands of pages about the biology, the science, the medicine, the psychology, the psychiatry, the philosophy, the law. I was like, each one of those issues can become a chapter of the book. So I had like piles and piles of PDF files that I had printed out, journal articles. I mean, I even bought some endocrinology textbooks. Gender dysphoria is kind of like the deep discomfort that someone would feel as a result of a biological sex that doesn't line up with their gender identity. The analogy that I draw in the book is to anorexia, right? And just as think a high school girl who has anorexia, the problem's not with her body, so you're not going to prescribe her liposuction, though it is a problem, right? There is kind of a self-image issue or an eating control issue, like whatever, it might be different underlying causes. And so you want to treat it. It's a real condition. The treatment's not going to be with the body. The treatment's going to be with the mind, the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, et cetera, et cetera. That was my point with gender dysphoria, with people who think they're trapped in the wrong body. The problem's not with their body. The problem is with thoughts, with feelings, with emotions. And so even if you disagree with me, you should be concerned. If a social media company can choke the dissemination of a newspaper's reach, if the world's largest commerce online site, it's the largest retailer in the world, is a choke point, and we should be concerned about that. You wouldn't want to be experiencing gender dysphoria, but if you were experiencing it, you would want someone to be giving you kind of like authentic, compassionate guidance. And compassion detached from truth isn't authentic, right? It's a phony form of compassion where you just say what people want to hear.
I can't roll my eyes hard enough at this.
Who's going to pop off first?
Well, here's what I have to say. Whether he believes he's violating the terms or not, he is. And Amazon is a private entity. It's not a government-run entity. And they can choose what books they want to sell and what books they don't want to sell. And honestly, good for them, because this schlock does nothing but harm
How do you say that
community.
in English? What's schlock?
Yeah.
Well, garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of like I'm on the fence in the sense of the whole thing about freedom of speech and a person being able to express their opinions, et cetera, et cetera. But on the flip side, it's so funny to me, and not funny, but funny as an expression, that he tries to come off like, oh, well, I'm not using mental illness in the book. I'm not saying, because that's like belittling the community and stigmatizing the community. But then he's saying, because he compared it to transgenderism or being transgender to anorexia, he's saying that it's a mental thing. We don't have to change our bodies. Yeah. We need to fix our minds. And so he's actually going against what we as a community have been fighting for such a long time.
It's another example of someone who is not trans trying to define who trans people are and speak for us, right? And he has no right doing that. And Amazon said,
well, I think,
give him the boot. Give him the boot. He's a hack. He's a hack. And I mean, I totally agree. I mean, he's a source of misinformation, kind of, pretty much. But the other thing I got from the story was the senators who were on that bill. These are the same guys who were saying, "Oh, I'm being censored," and they're shameless. I'm sorry. Today I'm in a political
well, you are a political individual.
Yeah. So, but I got that. That's the other part of the story I got from it.
And I think Amazon's just trying to do the right thing for trans people.
Well, I was going to say that false sense of persecution that we always see coming from the right. And that story where they said, oh, the left is coming from us. And all of those senators who signed those letters are the folks who haven't signed the Equality Act, constantly talk about how just say horrible things about our community. And they're standing up in this instance. Meh.
And did you notice that he talked about the stories of people that had detransitioned and how tragic, and I think that was his whole
underlying
yes, exactly, for the book. I mean, percentage-wise, I don't even know what the percentage is of trans people that transition, but I think it's a very small percentage, and he was using that.
Again, these are all the same props. These are the same straw men that folks use against our community to deny us rights, to deny us access, to deny us citizenship. So piss off.
So when I first saw this topic, I was very conflicted on my thoughts and views. First, I want to talk about censorship and how you should not be. However, then I started to look in further. I Googled this on audible.com. I Googled this on amazon.com. And what popped up was the transgender hatred books. Like the one we talked about on the show, Irreversible Damage, the transgender craze seducing our daughters and making our daughters men. Then I realized this was a transgender book about trans people written by a cisgender male.
Hello.
Hello, red flag. That is not wise. Nothing about us without us. And then comparing us to anorexic people, where the problem is not our body, it's in our minds. That is definitely wrong. All trans people, every single one of us has something called gender dysphoria. Some of our dysphoria is in our face. Some of our gender dysphoria is in our chest. Some of our gender dysphoria is only here. But no matter where our gender dysphoria is, it's body related. And when we look in the mirror, we are very triggered by what we see. Imagine going to the bathroom and hitting yourself every time you use the bathroom because your body is wrong. That is definitely body related, and that is definitely a severe form of gender dysphoria. I am super glad that this book was taken off Amazon.
LGBTQ+ news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBT